Welcome. I'm Charlotte Fitzpatrick, and I'm chairing the Cambridge Community Board meeting this evening. I'd like to welcome all of you joining us today, including staff, and we've got other representatives from other local bodies. I know we have some followers online with us today too. Welcome. I wish I was in my PJs and and socks on an evening like tonight. So hopefully you're cozy there. We have a full house this evening, which is fantastic to see. It's wonderful to have you all along here. So we'll get started. We're going to run a pretty tight ship in our meeting tonight, so that we can work through things quite swiftly. But obviously, we've got some topics on our agenda tonight which are of interest to people. So we will ask some good questions as well. So I'd like to start by our apologies. We've received apologies from board member Andrew Myers. Could I have, so I'd like to move that the Cambridge Community Board receives the apologies of board member Myers. Could I have a mover and seconder? So we'll have Gerda and Stuart, thank you. Any disclosure of members' interests? Nothing to disclose? Okay, we're going to move straight into our public forum. So just for the community's benefit, our public forum, we will ask speakers to come up, whether you're an individual or group, one by one. It would be lovely if you could introduce yourselves, and if you're representing an organisation, to also tell us a little bit about your organisation. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to speak. So Debs will be taking the time here, and you'll hear a little timer go off. Our members may ask you questions at the end, but we won't be having any discussion on the topics that you raised tonight. So I think we'll get started. At the top of my list, I have Denley Hira, who's joining us this evening from Te Ko'utu Kohangareo. Would you like to come up, Denley?
Okay. Just that my back's not turned to these guys. I thought I'll just back up against the wall here. Anyway, tēnā tātou. Let me see. It's a little bit nerve-wracking to have so much whānau in the room all looking at me, but ko Waikato te awa, ko maunga kaua te maunga, ko tainui te waka, ko Ngāti Haua te iwi, ko Titio, ko te rangitaupi te hapū, ko Titio Haua te marae, ko Denley Rai Māpāhira tōku ingoa. I'm here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to have a kōrero to you all to represent Te Ko'utu Kohanga Reo. It's here in Cambridge. It's on McLean Street down there. Does anybody know about the kohanga, or were even aware that Cambridge has a kohanga reo? Oh, ka pai. Well, then my job is practically done. But anyway, I have a slight ulterior motive for bringing the kohanga to everybody's attention tonight. So we've put in an application for the Cambridge Discretionary Fund, and we had to reach out to the Cambridge board. So here I am, wanting to become friends with you all. Okay, yes. The kohanga's been in existence for the last 30 years. I have a mokopuna who's now 16, who went to that kohanga. I have 2 more mokopunas, and I am grateful that there is a kohanga reo to give myself and my daughter some relief. But just in case anybody wasn't aware, during the 70s, there was a decline in fluent reo speakers. Kohanga came out of that decline, and its purpose is to revitalise reo Māori within children, so that we can have fluent reo Māori speakers. And so after the kohanga reo, you'll see kura kaupapa Māori. That's another creation that's come out of land loss, reo loss. We've lost a few things. I get them mixed up from time to time, but let's just stick to the reo and kohanga reo. So that's the purpose of kohanga, is to revitalise te reo Māori. Tēnā tātou, that's me.
Kia ora, Denley, thank you. Would any members like to ask questions? Kia ora.
Dinley, from what age do you take kids to teach them te reo?
A little earlier, so probably 10 months. 10 months, yeah. So I think that's we're very fortunate that they take them that young. But yeah, from about 10 months. I've got a 12-month-old mokapuna and a 2 going on 3 mokapuna. And by the way, I have to say, we've only moved here from Kirikiriroa back in October. My daughter and my mokapuna, we love Cambridge. I was a little bit fearful of moving here, but you fellas have been quite kind to me and my whānau.
Yeah, kia ora. Did you want to ask a question? Dinley, we just have one more question for you.
Yeah. Just one question is sort of, and please excuse my ignorance, but is Kohanga Reo full-time for students, or do some of the students sort of, attend your Kohanga Reo in addition to more mainstream sort of activities?
It is our only, for myself, for my mokapunas, we've made the choice that is their preschool upbringing, is kohanga. We have a Friday off to take swimming and pony ride lessons here in Kemireti, but I would suggest that the majority of mamas like to pack their tamariki off to kohanga reo every day of the week. But yeah, it's a decision that whānau make to immerse their children in real Māori every day of the week from morning till afternoon. Yes, pai tō pātai.
Thank you.
Ka pai.
Okay, Gary, Bryant, would you like to come up? Thank you for joining us this evening. So you can just pop the microphone in front of you, and when you're ready to speak, press the button.
A couple of handouts here. I'll just pass them around. I'd like to share some. And take this one. Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you. Gerda invited me. Hello. We have a bit of an issue. Well, it's quite a big issue, but the upper bridge here at the end of Victoria Street we know, is a nightmare to travel across. And there are issues with people bringing caravans across and wide trailers. So I've sent my concerns to the traffic planning guys, and I got a response back saying we're happy with what we got, and we don't see any need to change it. So my issues are that the signage there is too close to the bridge. It should be back so that cars coming from the city, from the town to cross it, can make the decision to go down Williamson or not. Because I've seen cars with caravans stop and they end up backing back to go down the road. There was one time when a car with quite a wide trailer was coming the other way, and all you could hear along the bridge was as the car going towards it, but braking to try and get past it. So the traffic consultants or your traffic planners feel that they have the height sensitive system in place, which is good enough. And you go, well, it's not a height issue, it's actually a width issue that we're trying to deal with. And I've suggested that instead of having signs with words, you have a sign with pictures. The old story, a picture tells 1,000, says 1,000 words. Of a car towing a caravan, the car towing a wide trailer, and you have them at both ends of the bridge. So people go, oh yeah, I've got one of those, I can see it. Because you try and read anything and you're trying to focus on getting onto the bridge and it's just pointless. And I mean, if you look at the pictures I've sent around, the signs are just far too close to the entrance and you can't make a decision of going another way because you're there, you're stuck. So I know the board can't, they can offer suggestions or whatever, but they can't, demand that something be done. But I think as a safety issue, this is, quite an important one to try and, solve. And it's a pity we got the bridge as it is at the moment, but that's what we got. So, yeah. Now, I know there's consultation and there's discussion about let's improve the flow of traffic in and around Cambridge. But we don't want to talk anymore. Let's just get in and do it. And that's the problem that we have for a lot of councils around the country. A lot of talk, a lot of projects, a lot of plans, a lot of proposals put, and they just don't go anywhere. So yeah, I think it's time that something was done. So I'm happy to champion. I even offered to pay for some of the signs. Yeah. So has anyone got any questions at all?
Scary. Questions?
We had a few talks. So Gary, just to get more to specifics, how far back? So I'm taking it's Pope Terrace, Cook Street, Williamson Street,
Mhm.
Victoria Street.
Mhm.
How far back do you, to we get back to practicalities, how far back do you want that?
Well, probably between the bridge and Fort Street because they need to be able to turn down Williamson and have plenty of time to do that.
Mhm.
So it's, I don't know in metres, but halfway between, I suppose, Fort and the start of the bridge. The Fort and probably the start of Williamson, I'd say. And on
then-
the other side, I'm not sure where you'd put those, but it's not, you seem to have more people with caravans coming from the city than coming the other way. The other way is probably people with wider trailers or whatever on a Saturday morning. So, yeah. Anything else?
That's a question.
A question and a comment, and it's interesting. I note that the maximum weight is 3,000 kilograms. It's interesting when you start getting to large SUVs and big pickup trucks,
Mm.
they probably already exceed that limit.
Yeah, but there's still the width of pretty well a car and, they can get across reasonably safe.
I mean, what you're really doing, to me anyway, it's preaching. I've had 2 occasions where I've had it stop on the bridge,
Mhm.
actually try and let a camper van get by without actually taking away.
Side of your car, yeah.
So, there's different avenues, I think, and I've made a couple of suggestions, and there's a weight versus whether those actually come into it.
Okay. So you responded back to me, did you? You're Chris, are you?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for that. Maybe we have to get some press.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. We've jotted down your concerns here. While we can't give you any solutions right now, it's certainly, especially from a safety perspective, something that we will escalate to a transportation team and get a response back to you. Okay. Thank you. Oh, okay. Thanks for coming along. So we'll ask kindly Caroline White to come up. And Wainu, would you like to join her now? Welcome. Yeah, so when you're ready, just press the button and share.
So my name's Caroline White and this is Verna Schreibner. And we're here as spokespeople for the signatories of a petition received by the Mayor last month. We made a presentation to the Waipa District Council last week, the commentary of which you might have seen in the Waikato Times last Thursday. We want to make this community board aware of the situation in the hope that we can help each other make Cambridge a better town for everyone. As a brief background, the issue revolves around the stretch of road between Te Awamutu, Kiki, through Cambridge Road, Pope Terrace, Cook Street and Shakespeare Street in Leamington, and the explosion of the number of heavy trucks and traffic travelling through that area. For 3 years, Verna and Pat Hall, among others, have been lobbying council, district council, NZTA and police to acknowledge and remedy the problem. And we were delighted at our reception at the council last week, and particularly thankful to Mike for allowing that to happen. So I don't know if everybody or anyone's aware of that road. If you know that road, it's just got busier and busier and busier in the last few years. And the numbers that we believe are travelling through are 600 heavy trucks a day. And that means 2 trucks every minute. And this isn't just the daytime, this is night and day. On top of that, there are 10,000 other vehicles a day. Just a staggering volume, and it's about half of the traffic that travels up Transmission Gully in Wellington, which is $1 billion highway, just to give some perspective on the number. You know, it's really huge. So we've got 3 issues with this. Our issues are our mental health of the residents, ratepayers living along there. Secondly, the damage to our homes. And thirdly, the danger and of the speed of the traffic going through, and just the volume as well. So mental health, as you can imagine, being awakened all night by these trucks rolling through. Don't know if anyone here today lives on any of those streets, but I'm sure you'd attest to it if you did. It's pretty tricky living through all night, but particularly from about 1:30 to 5:30 are the most offensive, I would say. And again, this is every couple of minutes. The damage to our homes is getting increasingly scary, actually, because we feel like we're having little earthquakes all the time. Our houses are shaking. And actually, I live in Goldsmith Street, on one street back from the main road. So poor old Verna gets the brunt of it, and the people on the actual street. It's not very pleasant. Houses are shaking, cracks are appearing. Yeah, we're very concerned about the state of our homes. The third thing, that the speed, well, it's just pretty scary, even walking along that street. And there's a huge community out there. What's it called? By the River Gardens? Those things. There are all these new subdivisions. And are these children going to walk to school? Or it's tricky and scary. And even as an adult, certainly I wouldn't be cycling along it, although we try sometimes. So that's what we just wanted to let you know, that we told the council last week. And Verna's got a bit more information to add to that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, everyone, for this opportunity. We're basically following a couple of lines of inquiry at the moment. We've submitted a petition to council, which they're working through and responding to. But I can say that, to give you a little bit of information about why it's happening, why we're objecting, is the fact that the council maintains that until there's another bridge, the low bridge connects the 2 parts of town. And therefore, the heavy traffic needs to be allowed. However, the problem is that the majority of the trucks are entering the corridor on Cambridge Road and turning right at the roundabout at the low bridge, not left. They would be turning left to service the town, no problem. But the minority of the trucks are doing that. So actually what we have at the moment is like a council-sponsored rat run, because the trucks are supposed to go from TA, State Highway 3 to the airport, round to Tamaheri and join State Highway 1 there. But this is an easy shortcut. And because heavy trucks are allowed, because of the argument of, oh, we have to keep the town together, it's about connection, they allow the trucks. But the truckers are seeing a loophole there, and they are using that loophole. So that's a major issue that we have. There's a discrepancy there between the intention of the council and the reality on the ground. The second thing for us that we are going to pursue is the fact that that whole area along the river has got a very, very high amenity value. Actually, we are right on the river, which is the green belt, which is gold standard in terms of place and amenity score, according to this new One Network framework. And to allow that kind of traffic, some days 11,000 vehicles a day on a road right next to a very, very high amenity area, access to the river, walkways along the river for use for the whole town, and easily accessible, of course, through across the high bridge. So those are the two avenues we're hunting down at the moment. And we'd love to, as we go along, because for us, we're in this for the long haul. Our very lives actually depend on it. It's not just something that we feel strongly about. It is a matter of life and death for us. So we will be pushing this all the way, but those are our two lines that we're following at the moment. Any questions we could answer?
What you're saying is that what you'd like to have is a weight limit for heavy traffic as far as coming into Cambridge and going across.
Weight limit would be good, but there are certain local operators who need a permit. They will be over the limit, but actually those are not so much our problem. A weight limit would be good, but what do you do with guys who need to operate in town and deliver and so forth? So we're not looking at a total ban, no, but a weight limit already exists. They're not allowed over a certain limit to come down Cambridge Road, even though they are, because the police tell us, oh, sorry, we don't have a weighbridge, so it's really hard for us. Well, the fact of the matter is those truckers are driving in their cab. They've got a permit, which says they must go SH3 and join SH1 at Tamahere. It's a permit that they've been issued. The fact that it's not policed, well, that's not really our problem. It shouldn't be our problem, but it has become our problem. The police are seriously understaffed, it seems. I think there are 7 policemen in that commercial vehicle unit between the Bombay Hills and that little coastal town on the way to New Plymouth. Wakino, is it? 7 of them to police that entire stretch. And so 2 of them have been trying to catch the trucks, stop them, but they have no weighbridge. There has to be a different way. You can't issue a permit that's not enforced. So yes, weight limits actually exist already. It's a rat run. The truckers don't care. We have a 3-trailered, 9-axled log trucks coming through every time, or hourly, all the time. And those things weigh 60 tons, not allowed on the road. The peat, the highway, it's not a highway, they call it an arterial route, but across the peat there, it's taking a beating. But thanks for the question.
On the same vein, the lower bridge, that's got a weight limit on it as well, isn't it? Which I think, if I remember right, is that some of those trucks are not allowed to cross that bridge.
I would agree with you. We've been told differently, but I would agree with you.
Anything else? Yeah.
So aside from enforcement, do you have other suggested remedies?
Well, the fact is that the place where they duck down is in Kiki. It's on down Golf Road. So I've been there to talk to all those residents there, and they have the same problem we have. As the trucks come up through Kiki, they don't continue on to their little bypass, SH3 bypass. They duck down Golf Road, go down Gulf Road, and then they're on Cambridge Road, they turn right and they shoot through here to get to SH1. So there at that intersection, there should be something there saying, listen, this is it. You cannot turn right here if your permit says you're supposed to go straight, or something like that. The same, yeah, signage. The same up here. They're doing it in the other direction as well, not just in that direction. They're coming off the highway, past the golf course, across the low bridge, and off they go. And it's nothing to do with our economy here. These trucks add nothing to the town at all. They are actually from the King Country and New Plymouth, these truckers. So that argument doesn't hold water with us at all, that they have to be allowed because it's for the town. It's got nothing to do with town.
Yeah, some really good points made. Would you like to ask one more question, Pip?
I'd be interested to, do you have origination and destination information with regard to those vehicles, where they're originating from and where they're going to? And is that data available for analysis?
So does this have to be green or red? Green. All right. So green, you can hear me. All right. So obviously, first of all, you have signage on the trucks themselves, and you can see where they come from. Second, what we've done this week is we've requested information. In 2024, 2025, the council themselves actually had a survey going, and they collected a lot of information about trucks entering the corridor, how long they spend. If it's just 15 minutes, then you know they're just ducking out again. It's got nothing to do with town. And so we've requested that information, and I hope to have it within the 20 days stipulated. So there is data available. We've got 24-hour video surveillance going now because of this, the lack of council information available. We've got 24-hour video surveillance, and we're going to bring that into the equation.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. For
Thank
sharing
you.
that. Yeah, some really great.
Thank you very much.
And really appreciate you coming
I
along.
hope you
this
sleep
evening.
well tonight.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so we'll move to Marie Blakey. Would you like to come up and join us? Yeah, so your green light is on, and when you're ready, you can chat away.
Thank you. I'm just going to be reading because. So my name is Marie, and I'm a resident of Aspen Road, rural zoned, becoming increasingly filled with lifestyle homes and on a predominantly quiet local road, shared by many for recreation, quiet, all except for a quarry and its associated quarry trucks. My original neighbours have not changed in the entire decade I've owned my property. Rather, many new neighbours have moved into the area as properties have become subdivided. In 2016, I purchased my land after doing due diligence and was comfortable knowing the nearby quarry had a consent for only 10 trucks in and 10 trucks out, and that the Waipa District Council would be looking after this by monitoring and enforcement. So, I went ahead and I built my home, and in 2018, I excitedly moved in. At the time, I was an emergency medical technician for St. John, and I was preparing for a night shift. I was trying to rest during the day, and I couldn't sleep because of loud, Caroline and Verna would understand, loud crashing and banging and resonating noises that sound like thunder inside my house. I realised it was the quarry trucks. They ripped past at 100 kilometres per hour, extremely noisy with their bouncing empty trailers, testing out their engine brakes. But wait, there's more. I counted 60 truck movements between 11 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. That's only 3.5 hours. No wonder there is so much noise. So I took a photo of 3 truck and trailer units lined up waiting to be served and sent it in to the Waipa District Council. I was informed by Ken Danby, who was still an enforcement officer there, that should I continue to complain, the quarry will just increase its consent and that will devalue my lovely new home. Sorry, makes you want to cry. Wow, threat received, loud and clear. I shared that message with my neighbours and figured all I could do was get on with my busy life and try not to be home during the hours of the quarry operation. Turn the clock forward 8 years, 2026. I turned 64 this year, so my busy working life is a little bit quieter now. I get to spend a bit more time at home. Since I have spent more time at home, I've actually been privy to how many quarry trucks the Aspen Road Quarry has been doing. Together with my neighbours, my lovely neighbour, we recorded the quarry operator consistently doing 2.5 times his consent each day, along with many other blatant breaches of his consent conditions. But hey, that's a huge story filled with massive clouds of toxic crystalline silica sand dust filling the Mangakawa Reserve airspace, settling on our properties, official reports to the council which have been altered to satisfy his consent conditions, and thereby not paying the correct amount of pavement deterioration fee. The list is long. However, for my 5 minutes, I want to raise awareness of the lack of scheduled monitoring and therefore enforcement around quarries in Waipa, with the end result of what we're all beginning to see is increased heavy truck and trailer units in town, as raised by Caroline White's story in the Waikato Times. Unless affected residents count trucks and alert the council of breaches, no one is monitoring the truck movements or holding them accountable. Once an affected resident reports a breach, there then begins an incredibly drawn-out process where the quarry, who is operating a discretionary activity, is afforded multiple opportunities to redeem itself at the expense of the affected ratepayer who is just trying to live their best life in the sanctuary of their own home. The current trend for quarries is to request in their consents to have an average of truck movements per month so that they may respond to demand. However, this makes it absolutely impossible to monitor. So it is highly likely that the volume of quarry trucks from Kaipaki Road Quarry that you're seeing along Pope Terrace and Shakespeare Road are in excess of the consent allocation of 132 truck movements on a day, with a monthly daily average of 106 truck movements. Although there are 23 consented quarries around the area, with new ones still to appear, I'm only going to refer to 3. Picture this on just one day in Cambridge town, 132 truck and trailer movements from Kaipaki Road Quarry, plus once Newcombe Road Quarry opens with 400 heavy daily truck and trailer movements, and then add to that the increased 90 on a day heavy truck and trailer movements the Aspen Road Quarry currently is trying to seek. This equates to a minimum of 622 truck trailer movements in Cambridge on just one day. These trucks can take any route. There is no control to their frequency. It's ever evolving. They just go wherever the sand may take them. So Cambridge will no longer be the town of trees and champions, but the town of quarries and quarry trucks. I'd just like to finish with a burning question, if that's okay. Just how is the council monitoring Kaipaki Road quarry truck movements over an entire month? Because myself and my neighbours have seen firsthand how much the enforcement team have allowed the Aspen Road Quarry to breach, provide inaccurate official reports, and basically rip off the Cambridge community.
Yeah, very, very good points raised. And yeah,
It's been a long road.
yeah, we really appreciate that it's probably quite difficult to talk about too when you're speaking about your livelihood. Now, would any members like to ask any questions? I've taken notes, and there's definitely some things here that we would probably appreciate a response from staff on. Would anyone like to ask any questions at this moment?
Maria, I remember we had this talk yonks ago. Now, just you mentioned briefly on silica, and is there any damage to your house or any extra dust or things like that? Or is it just the truck movements that's a big issue?
No, I've got a beautiful video I can show you on my phone later if you'd like, of the sand up, just lifting up, and it's a massive cloud and it just travels so far. I actually got in my car because it was all over my face. It was disgusting. And that was from Fencourt Road, quite a way off. Apparently it can travel more than 3 kilometres. It is dangerous to people's health. I don't know if it's ever been tested, but it is used for cement, that sand, so it sort of rings a few alarm bells that it can have crystalline in it. But There is no mitigations. It's an old consent. It's been renewed a few times and come back in a different variation. He's trying to do another variation, but he has stockpiles that he doesn't look after. He doesn't wet his haul road properly. He doesn't do anything properly.
Thanks, Marie. Thank you for that. Right, Andy Marsden, would you like to join us?
Okay, so first and foremost, my name's Andy Marsden. I've been a business owner here in Cambridge for the last 20 some years. First and foremost, I'm going to echo already 2 speakers through some of this. I apologise and don't apologise for it in the same breath. I'm totally and utterly aware that in Cambridge, innovation and enterprise is an important thing. We all need jobs, we all need income. And we also have been resident on Kaipaki Road alongside the quarry at 3831, alongside Revital and Valley Sands, which has been there for some time. And for that period, we've actually had a really good relationship with Peter Rabbage and his staff there for that period. However, we've recently had a new player to the scene, primarily DemoWorks, under a guy, Henry Fullerton Smith. Now, the reason I'm here is to highlight the application to raise what was a non-notified change of use for the quarry to becoming a waste processing site, which for some reason was deemed as just a small change in use. There is a subsequent level 3 application going into Regional Council, under which they're going to be having much more enhanced waste disposal on site and actually filling the entire quarry with refuse and rubbish of whatever forms that level 3 becomes. So Cambridge is going to have a nice big fat landfill right alongside its river and right alongside Cambridge Road within a stone's throw of the centre of town. I don't know if any of you remember driving through Narrawahia and all the wonderful sights and smells you would get from that. So hopefully we don't end up in that position, but that's why I'm here to highlight it. So the processing of building and waste materials is a good thing. We need to do it. We need to look after our own waste. We need to look after our environment. However, planting a load of that stuff right along the river bordering Leamington is probably a poor choice at best. The domestic development land, which now horseshoes around what is going to become a level 3 waste site, is just ridiculous. I cannot understand the thinking behind it. I cannot understand the reasoning behind it. So the initial consent, as I say, was from DemoWorks Venture, was considered a small change in use from it being a quarry to basically diversifying into processing. So basically, there's a high risk to all the current, future and local neighbouring properties for contamination events, whether this asbestos, heavy metals or other contaminants such as smoke experienced in last week's fire, which we all enjoyed, I'm sure you say. This fire had the potential to become significantly worse when the massive stockpile on site, which thankfully did not ignite, there was enough separation between the two, and swift action from our wonderful fire service did a good job of that. But it was only through luck that it got smelled and got spotted and got reported. Now, asbestos, we've mentioned that just earlier. That can stay in the air for 72 hours after it's been disturbed, and other dust-borne contaminants can travel long distances, as Marie mentioned earlier. So we're only going to be introducing into our environment more and more contaminants. The enforcement team around dust complaints have attended and documented both from Waipa and from Waikato. And this has come in relation to not only vehicular transportation on site, but also from the processing machinery, both the ripping machinery and the diggers and the stuff that moves and the loaders and everything else. We've got footage of clouds and clouds of dust basically being thrown into the air because no dust suppression is getting used. So the report goes in, enforcement go down, they turn on the water suppressors. A week or two later, they can't be asked. They stop doing that, and we end up with dust, and then we report it. So the whole process just continues. So the roadways aren't kept damp either, so we just end up with clouds of dust all around. The original resource consent states that material on site should be there for no longer than 5 months. But I can tell you from literally knowing the site now that there's stuff on site that's been there in excess of 15 months. There's a massive pile there. They're never getting to the bottom of it. They just keep bringing stuff in, processing it through, and just using what is already there as a sound barrier. The resource consents around sound has not been actually enforced. So we can easily see that the 150,000 cubics allowed on site, we're almost certain, because we've had 2 independents come to us and view the site, and they have said, in their opinion, yes, it's an opinion, there is in excess of 150,000 cubes. Now, this is supposed to be controlled by, wait for it, counting how many trucks come in. Anyone counting trucks? So once again, we're in a position whereby how many trucks have gone in? Nobody knows. Have the logs been kept correct? No idea. Can we rely on the operator to be doing the right thing? No, we can't, because of regular omissions and following procedure or non-following of procedure. So as part of the subsequent, I've just gone past one. There's also a requirement in the current resource consent for 3,000 square meters of planting proposed as an ecological restoration plan. Has this been overlooked? Perhaps the next section answers it. There is now a huge landfill proposed, so hence why would we bother to plant out? So as part of that subsequent application to make this a level 3 site, these areas would just become buried or cleaned or whatever you want to class it as. So I understand there's a section 42 request in place, which was put in there last November, asking for further information from the site developers. And as far as I'm aware, and according to the website, nothing has actually been followed up. The timeframes around that section 42 to highlight what's going on and where the planning's at has not been followed up, and nobody's actually following up. So throughout this, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions because I just don't know. I raised a question with council around the first stage being a non-notifiable application. Would the second stage be notifiable, going from a level 1 to a level 3? Which basically, I don't know if anybody knows the site at all. Is anyone familiar with it? It is a massive site for it to become a full landfill. Waikato District Council said yes, it would probably be a notifiable, probably note. And yes, once again, this appears to be getting overlooked or omitted. Public consultation has once again been bypassed, and at this stage it appears that had the full application for a level 3 site gone in right at the very start, it would definitely have been a notifiable planning application. Everyone would have had a public right to say, hey, yeah, I'd love a landfill right in the middle of Cambridge. Or maybe they say no. You know, it could actually happen. So what I'm worried about, one of the things I think we should highlight is having this conversation. Is this going to be classed as another small change to the operation on site and it become non-notifiable? So everybody who lives on Pope Terrace, you can have as much silica dust and as much contaminants as you wish. And everybody else who's trying to transit through town can contend with even more trucks, because if you've got a big landfill site, you're going to want to fill it. And if you're going to fill it, you're going to use trucks, more and more trucks. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just wrong for the town. There are those around, and maybe 1 or 2 even in the room, that think this comes from perspective of vendetta. No, it comes from volition. I don't believe it's the right thing for Cambridge. I don't believe it's the right location. I don't believe the people on Pope Terrace need even more trucks coming past, with the potential for people to have contaminants strewn through town. I don't believe that we need the location to be so close to town centre. I think the fire highlights just how poorly and how easily contaminants can travel around Cambridge. We're only lucky that the wind was coming from weird direction. Otherwise, it would have been straight through the town centre, and the town centre would have been full of wood smoke. Sound modelling, the sound modelling is not being adhered to. They've got a great big pile they just put the machinery onto. Basically, if we go to a larger site, they'll almost be compacting. When they were putting this site together, the compaction vibration was vibrating both my house and a number of neighbors' house on a regular basis, whilst they tried to put a stabilized ground pad onto it, which was non-permeable. Well, according to the latest geotechnical scientific report, which states clearly that this is all going to be sand, they'll have to do a full compaction of something to protect the groundwater. Lo and behold, we will have months of our houses vibrating just to be able to have a landfill next door. So the excessive vehicles, excessive dust, excessive materials on site, excessive periods in contravention of the resource consent around the different stuff that's not getting done, just basically points that Waipa District residents are going to be left with a massive cleanup cost when the whole thing falls over. It's the viability of the process should really be investigated. The material that is being processed on site, from what I understand from others within the industry, there are very, very, very few people that utilize anything that's coming out of this ecologically friendly. And I use this genuinely. It's classed as an ecologically good thing to do. Basically, it's getting minced up, and majority of the staff, I'm being reliably informed from others within the industry who do similar things in demolition and in waste recovery. A whole bunch of it is getting minced up, chucked in a truck, taken to Rotorua and dumped in a forest at another site. So basically, the level 3 site, all it's going to do is try and save some diesel and road user charges, just dump it here in Cambridge. So the lack of consultation to our community has quite frankly been insulting. Our area needs it. Even if our area needs some way to mitigate its waste and how it's processed, better locations, given the amount of quarries, 37. Sorry. Either way, there are a number of quarries. One of them has got to be a better location than so close to town. Really does. Vehicle transit through town collectively, Cambridge residents have had enough. And as for the future, I suggest that hiding these subjects from your residents is just downright wrong. And it really does need to be highlighted and more people have input. It's just wrong that it's been hidden. So just for clarity, it is important to note that I'm not against business. I like business. Business is great. People having jobs is great. People actually being able to turn up to work every single day and do what they need to is brilliant. But this isn't. It's crap.
Andy, did you have some photos that you wanted to share?
There were some sent through. So that is the site as it currently stands. You can see just down, in fact, I'll probably point it out better than I can describe it.
Sorry, just pause for a second.
Sorry, people at home. This image actually just shows where, for once, the water cannon is actually being functioned. You can see the amount of site here that's actually not got any dust suppression. You can see how dry it is. We've got trucks coming from lots of different directions. And this waste pile, by all accounts, is now being used as sound buffer for the machinery that's just on the other side of it. The original resource consent should be sitting, the machinery that's actually mincing this stuff, behind sound wallings over here. It took months and months and months before the jib wall, the jib linings ended up under some sort of cover. For a period, the permeable layer, which was down here, all this machinery was actually operating off the side of it. And it took 3 complaints to actually get somebody to do something about it. Can we move on to the next image, please? So we can see how much dust and silica is actually being thrown up by trucks on site. Yes, there is a quarry there too. We thoroughly understand that. But as I can state to you, for the previous 8 years, we had a good relationship with the quarry. They were dampening things down as a matter of course. The current situation is very different from that. So as we can see, the current demo work site is currently functioning in this area here. you can see now the 4 stages of what is expected to become an entire landfill through the entire valley. All of this, from what I understand, and our friends from the planning might be able to turn around and say something different. I don't know so, but I would expect there needs to be some sort of impermeable protection of the watercourse below that, or some sort of water management, because all of this area is sand. So hence the compaction for that amount of land is going to be atrocious, certainly for anybody within however many meters of it. Next one, please. So the reason for this image, basically all of this area here is designated for approximately 2032 to become, some of it has already been released, but it's all going to be large block residential land. So we're going to end up with a horseshoe around a great big area of landfill. And so my sort of like parallel to Narrawahi is actually not very far off.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Just check, Monty, you were taking notes, so we've jotted down your questions, Andy.
Sure.
Would anyone like to ask Andy any questions right now?
Yes, Andy, so we had several discussions about this, and
Yes.
Tamarind will carry on with some issues. To your personal property with this, the dust, can you tell us a bit about that? Because I went to Andy's and Tessa's house, and I was there 40 minutes, and my car was absolutely covered in dust and midges. So compared to Quarry, when the Quarry was there, up to and now, the difference.
It's night and day. It literally is night and day. So prior to the last 12 months, vehicle cleaning, house cleaning was a relatively straightforward process, wouldn't take forever. Our house now is currently dust. Literally, you can dust, and as Gerda said, you can be dusting again if you really want to be dusting every single day. You can easily do it. You can do it morning, evening, and night, and you'll still end up with dust everywhere. Our house, we have it washed regularly. We always have it washed, just to keep everything spick and span. Within a week, it looks like nobody's done anything. My wife's, generally speaking, my wife most evenings is coughing for maybe an hour before we can get to sleep. Yes, she has a little bit of asthma, fair, but nothing like this. This has just been horrific.
And any other questions at this stage? So I'd invite you to stay, because we are going to move the chair's report. I'm going to propose to move the chair's report forward in this meeting, where we've also addressed it in there, and then staff may wish to respond to that.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Andy. And Tamarin, would you like to join us now as well?
Yes, sir. So my name is, so it's a bit hard, isn't it, being this way and then this way? My name is Tamarin Hankinson, and we moved to the area about 4 years ago, and we live about 100 metres from Andy, probably 100 metres actually further away from the resource consent site, which is the recycling facility. And as Andy mentioned, it was approved non-notifiable. So the first that we heard of it was the significantly increased noise and actually vibration of our houses. Our houses were actually vibrating inside, and then the levels of dust. And that's the first communication, I guess, or notifying of us that something had changed in that area was these outputs from the facility. So the dust, as Andy said, is absolutely horrific. Now, sorry, I should have actually sent them through via email too, but you can hand it around. So this is actually, what I've done is I've wiped a patch on my deck. I've wiped a patch, and you can see where the dust has actually, so I've wiped the patch clean, and you can see the dust that is the residue. So this deck was actually freshly professionally cleaned and actually stained not long before this photograph. So it was spotlessly clean. Oh, sorry, spotlessly clean before yes, before this was taken. So that's just an example. So the dust actually also inside the property is well, it's just unmanageable. You actually, the house gets dusted and within an hour there's dust on all the surfaces. And as Gerda mentioned, it's not just the dust. There's actually the cars, they have like midges attached to the dust. So there's obviously something in the dust that is attracting the insects. So that's the current state of play, that this recycling facility has been approved and is in operation. I think the pad of that is 140 metres squared, whereas the new resource application that's been put in, which Andy showed the diagram on the screen there, is actually 21 hectares, so 140 metre pad, and they're now applying to have a whole 21 hectares of managed 3 landfill. So you're probably more aware of this than me. I'm not an expert in environmental law, but in the application, of course, with a managed 3-level site, there are actually accepted contaminated materials. So some of these materials are arsenic, lead, cadmium, mercury, chromium, and zinc. And actually, even in the resource consent itself, they are applying to have higher levels than what the World Health Organization actually deems as an at-risk level. I'll give you an example. For cadmium, which actually causes chronic kidney disease and bone demineralization, they are proposing that they can accept 10 milligrams per kilogram, whereas accumulation in the renal cortex of between 50 and 300 micrograms actually causes permanent damage. Other things like mercury, they are proposing a limit of 3 milligrams per kilogram, whereas a 0.4 to 0.22 milligrams in the blood is considered a lethal range. So even in the application, what they're proposing to accept is higher. So with these heavy metals, of course, it's a number of them are what is called bioaccumulation. So in living things, they actually don't process and they accumulate and they build on each other. So the difference between it going into a water supply or being diluted is quite different to how it reacts in a living organism. So I think what we're very concerned about is if this is approved, you can see the level of, I guess, commitment to the dust situation with materials which don't have contaminants. Can you imagine the situation with allowing this type of dust going from 140 metres to 21 hectares and then from a clean field to a contaminant situation? So that's really, I just really wanted to come and sort of shed a bit more light and from, another member of the community living close by. I think it's a real concern for the community.
Yeah, thanks, Tamron. Any questions to add? Okay. I think we've jotted those down. Oh, yeah, Gerda, off you go.
Tamron, when we had a quick talk, you also mentioned, so you've got a swimming pool, that your swimming pool becomes virtually unusable because of the sand and the silica in the bottom, and your kids can't use it anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I have photos of that I'm happy. I've got a lot of photos of all of the dust effects, but yeah, there's a layer of grit on the bottom of the swimming pool, which has, you've had the pool vacuumed, and within 2-3 hours, there's a layer of, it's a light brown layer of grit, which you can see. It looks like someone's poured sand into the swimming pool. And again, the real worrying thing here is actually there's a lot of, because we live in a rural area, there's a lot of people still who live on tank water. So this dust and grit and the contaminants potentially from the additional accepted materials in a managed site would be going into people's actual drinking water, and that's a huge concern. We also use it to water the garden. I mean, most of us have quite large vegetable gardens which we eat from, and so on and so forth. So the situation is bad now, and we've put in, I don't know how many complaints we've put in through to the council with photographic evidence of these, specifically the dust impact, but nothing has been done. And of course, it's a serious health risk, and also very much damaging our properties, and making it, less enjoyable to live in this beautiful area that we chose to live in.
Have you actually complained about the, raised concerns around the health impacts?
Yeah, I've sent a number of emails. I'm happy to forward those.
Yeah. What sort of response did you get to those emails?
I didn't actually get a reply. No reply.
Did you get a ticket number?
When I sent the one around the health risks, I actually sent it to members of the council directly, the most senior members, and they didn't respond.
Okay, thanks for that.
And then I have obviously logged many things through the portal where I have all the ticket numbers. Yeah, but I'd sent it to, I guess you would consider them the most senior members of the council, but I didn't actually get anyone responding.
Okay. Yeah, Monty?
Can I just clarify, you're talking elected members or staff when you're sending to senior
I can
members?
show you the people. I mean, I can forward the information if that's, yeah, I'll just forward the correspondence.
So just in summary, because we'll deal with it in the chair report as well, because I know you guys have spent hours on this because it's a real concern for the neighbourhood. So one of the problems, apart from the obvious here, is that you feel unheard.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. So I have, even about 3 weeks ago, when I sent another complaint about the dust, and I went through the proper process, uploading the photos into the portal, et cetera, and I had a response to say, yes, we will get back to you. Still nothing comes back. Just no. And then I think, sorry, I'm laughing because it was farcical, but I think the response was, oh, there's still dust issues. And I said, well, I didn't realize that I had to complain 20 times about the same thing. You didn't respond to my other issues. Nothing has happened. There's been no resolution. So yeah, just really not heard.
In a similar way about the consents as well, the fact that these consents are made without consultation and the propensity for a further wander down the road of dangerous materials without further consultation to the locality is somewhat of a worry, to say the least.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, we'll let you go back to your seat, but as I said, you're welcome to stick around. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak this evening? Okay. Okay, welcome.
Press here.
Yeah, it's green and it's ready to go. If you
Okay.
could just introduce yourself, that would be great.
My name is Lorraine Marsh. I've been a resident ratepayer in Cambridge for about 35 years. And I can, I know Vernon. And yeah, the truck traffic, it's not just truck traffic, it's traffic full stop. Started looking into it, and I was really quite shocked with the amount of consents that have been issued by our council. I looked non-notified. I looked at, did we take into account the impacts, the effects, cumulative effects? No. And my concern is that it isn't appreciated that this affects all of Cambridge. It just doesn't affect Kaipaki Road or Hope Terrace. And it's not about a right turn, and it's not about protecting a pretty village. This is about a whole town. I feel for the staff at times. I do realise that they're having to deal with a lot of legislation being thrown at them. I feel for the regional council. But ultimately, I have to get out of my house, I have to walk up my road, and I have to see children who do not understand the weight of a logging truck. They don't understand the weight of an aggregate truck, and they just run across the road. It upsets me that I drive down Cambridge Road on one side of the river and I see safety. I drive down my side and I see risk. I have an industrial background. I know about the importance of handling waste. I know all the work that these guys have probably done with the ministry to get standards in place. And the purpose is for New Zealand to handle our waste responsibly. And I don't understand, I genuinely don't understand how this site was selected. And I think the ministry, that's where they have a role at a very, very high level. Because ultimately it comes down to site every time. And in my opinion, if you're going, and this is personal, not an expert opinion, if you're going to put a waste plant in what is the centre of a town, of a growing town, you are going to need A1 plus standards in place to make sure everything works and works properly. And I'm not talking about people necessarily. And I'm telling you, I'll get back to it. What I'm talking about is online monitoring. What I'm talking about is containment. And it really frustrates me to see all the work that goes into from regulators, but also from operators, where they have put sites in place where for contaminants that are of a lesser type than, and we're talking about, what are we talking about? I would say, is it a class 2 and a class 3? And they are required to contain, they're required to monitor. I started going through the AEE, I started seeing things that I felt weren't fit for purpose. I had no opportunity to actually question that because the consent's been granted. So I don't have any solutions, but I also have suggestions. And the suggestion I have is that we need to also think about the existing industries that we have. Pope Terrace or down towards Cambridge, it's food processing. I mean, think about the risk there. You guys are going to talk about, I'm sure you are, the contaminants that you're looking at. They are at best what they've applied for, some of them atypical. I use that, I'll let you guys talk about it, but what I'm talking about is low levels of dioxin in the soil. Well, good luck measuring that. Good luck monitoring that in a truck. Last time I looked at it, that's a long, long, long time ago. It was $3,000, $4,000. I mean, it's not easy to do and it's not easy to monitor. So I have no suggestions, apart from maybe go back to the ministry. I want to see monitoring of our airshed. I want to see some monitoring done of what we are actually dealing with here. I want you guys to push for it. I know you've run out of money, but you can do the calculations. You can calculate about, how many trucks we're typically getting, how many, we need ambient monitoring, but we also need online monitoring. And I've been pretty hard, but dust means nuisance dust. Dust does not mean the level of contaminants, not the level, but the list of contaminants that are being disposed of at that site. So that's all I'm going to say, and so that's me done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lorraine. So the keywords there: standards, consultation, monitoring, contaminants. Other
And
things.
you can't push it from one side of the town to another, particularly when we have one of the youngest populations.
Okay. Anyone else who would like to join us? Okay. All right. I think we'll move on through our agenda. One formality, confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. So I'd like to move that the Cambridge Community Board confirms the minutes of the meeting held on 17th of March as circulated with the agenda as true and correct recording of proceedings. So moved by Gerda, second by Pip. Thank you. All in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, and now I'm proposing that we move to that we reorder our meeting slightly and bring an agenda item up. So we're going to, if that's okay, do the chairperson's report now, which we do talk about the DemaWorks side in. Is everyone happy with that? Changing the order? Okay, excellent. Thank you. So would anyone like to, I'll take my report as read. Would anyone like to ask any questions immediately in the report? Okay, so I think we'll just move straight on to the DemaWorks issue, and do appreciate we have staff and representatives from Waikato Regional Council here today, and Medical Officer of Health. No, unfortunately. So yeah, would you like to come up and you can help us understand the situation? That would be really helpful.
Yeah, perhaps if I start first. Sorry, I didn't want to really turn my back to everybody, so I'll just sit here if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So I'm Wayne Allen. I'm Group Manager here at Waipawa District Council. Firstly, this is just a verbal update. There's a formal report that will be submitted to the next board's meeting. We have Wendy Harris here, so Consent Manager, and so Wendy, just raise your hand, and Carl Tutties, Compliance Manager behind me from the Council, and also thanks very much for Patrick Lynch showing from the Waikato Regional Council, and Jonathan Caldwell as well, here from the Waikato Regional Council. As I said earlier, the MOH, unfortunately, Medical Officer Health was unable to be here, but was happy to take any health-related questions, and a response will be provided, which can be included in the report on next month's board agenda. Firstly, to the residents, I just want to acknowledge your time for coming along and talking about your concerns tonight, your views about not only the current operation, but the future proposed operation that is proposed by an applicant. So I acknowledge that and thank you. I'm really concerned to hear, if this is the case, that no responses have been received from you or to you from the council. I'll be interested to follow up on any of those issues. As you know, when the Cambridge recycling activity was approved in July 24, there was a delay in the commencement of the consent by the consent holder. And when activities were established some months later, several surrounding residents raised concerns with us, and we had a meeting with those residents and the consent holder at the time, and I'm sure a number of you remember, where we traversed a number of the issues and went through that. Whether the issues were resolved or not is another issue, but we had the meeting and we connected and we went through that. There's been a lot of issues that have been raised again tonight. I doubt very much we're going to get through all of those issues tonight. What I do and have been thinking of again is it would be really useful from my perspective and from my team's perspective to reconnect with you residents again, to talk through those issues, not only in relation to the existing activity, but in terms of the proposed activity. So Wendy will talk a little bit about the proposed activity, and there's been no decisions made on that activity. It's subject to a further information request. I hear your concerns that you're saying. No decisions in relation to the consultation process because we yet haven't got all the information in from the applicant. Until we get information in from an applicant, then we make a decision about notification. And that could be a public notification, it could be limited notification to residents, it could be non-notified. So I just wanted to make that clear. No decisions being made in relation to the proposed application. And I've been hearing about the significance of that application that you've raised, if indeed any consent was authorised. Ongoing monitoring. So in the meeting that we had, I did ask staff to be really responsive to residents' concerns with ongoing monitoring of the activities on the site. We've undertaken 13 site visits responding to concerns since September 25, and these were residents such as yourselves raising concerns with us. I've had enforcement staff, I've had environmental health officers checking compliance on things like noise and dust. As you know, so there's no secret around that. We've been trying to be responsive, so I was really concerned to hear that we haven't been responding to email, if that was the case. Carl will talk a little bit more about the condition of compliance, including noise mitigation and dust suppression, and I've heard and taken notes on some of those matters that you've raised. We've had specific testing done, and I'm really interested to know too, in terms of the pictures you're showing about dust and noise, is that current issues? Because I know when they were setting up, there was really issues around those at that time.
You've had emails and videos recently
Okay.
of exactly that.
So I'm just saying, initially, when it was establishing, there was those concerns. And so we've had noise monitoring undertaken down on the site. We've applied corrective actions to consent holders and excavator driver education to reduce thumping noises. So we've been responding to issues raised. There was concern about asbestos at the time. Those were tested, found negative.
That's all right, you just buried it.
There was air monitoring of recent fire by the regional council staff, and they can talk about that in terms of any exceedance of air quality guidelines. We believe there was none.
Sorry,
on the boundary.
Wayne, just pause for a second. Can I just ask that Wayne just be respectful and let Wayne listen. If you can just let him talk, that'd be really good.
The fire was raised, and quite rightly. It was really unfortunate that that occurred on the Friday morning. It triggered a multi-agent response. Fire Emergency New Zealand contained the fire, thankfully. And I hear what the points that was raised by Andy in regard to wind and so forth. We stood up an incident management team to manage the event from a council's perspective. I had environmental health and enforcement staff visiting the site. Medical officer of health was informed. The regional council were informed, and they undertook monitoring on this air quality monitoring. And Mr. Cordwell can talk a little bit about that. We did ongoing monitoring over the weekend by EHO staff and the Waikato Regional Council air quality equipment as well. and we put out information through media channels relating to the fire and response. The site operator implemented 24-hour works to excavate and douse hotspots and material. But importantly, and this is in terms of ongoing compliance, our enforcement team will be reviewing the consent holders has complied with the existing fire plan lodged as part of the application, given the recent incident. The consent holder, through their site manager, must undertake a cause investigation with FENS to establish the probable cause of the fire. The outcomes of that cause investigation will provide the basis for reviewing and improving the fire prevention, detection and mitigation measures. So it is a real concern, and it's a valid concern that you raise. We'll also be working closely with the regional council staff in this matter, and Patrick and May will have some more comment on that. And additionally, it's useful to have Patrick along and to talk about their ongoing on-site inspections and monitoring in relation to the regional consents, and he can talk about those requirements. Wendy, as I say, is here and can talk about the existing resource consents on site and the process of decision-making on the current recycling resource consent issued back in July 24. And also in terms of the current application that we've got from Resource Co for the proposed activity. We've put that information on the council's website, so and that's being transparent about that application, so that you're aware that the application has been lodged. And that's because we have an area of, in the website where there are applications of public significance can be put, even though we haven't yet reached any decision about notification. And we have people that are ringing us and saying, well, what's an update in relation to that application? Well, we haven't, because we're in the hands of the applicant to provide us the information. It's not something we can force. Once we've got all the information, we'll make decisions in relation to process issues. So yeah, that's probably me for a start, and then Wendy can probably talk a little bit about the suite of resource consents that are currently down there and the current application.
Kia ora everyone. So Wendy Robinson, Manager of District Planning and Growth. So obviously this is a rural site, rural zoned site. And so any industrial activity is non-complying in this location. That said, the site has been consented and operating as a quarry for 20 years, and it's a highly modified environment surrounded by industrial activities as well as rural activities. So while any activity essentially is being considered non-complying activity, that's slightly different to if this activity was being proposed in the middle of a horse farm or an arable farm. It's in a modified environment already. So the construction and demolition waste recycling study that was granted in July 2024 was non-notified, and the application was assessed for not having effects requiring public notification or limited notification to the neighbours. That's due to the operational points proposed and the management conditions put forward. So some points to note were that, excuse me, so the dust, odour and management plan was part of that condition, so that's an ongoing monitoring component. The proposed traffic numbers were considered relative to the consented limit already and based on the reducing quarrying activities. So it was balancing out effectively. The applicant proposed and had completed extensive landscaping improving the visual appearance of the site. But I appreciate, Mr. Marsden, you made comment on that, so that's not my area further. The activity was also stated to be complying with the noise rules, minimising the impacts for neighbours. So that was part of that application and where they're at. So obviously my team are now looking at the managed fill site, the second application by Resource Co. So that application is currently on Section 92 further information request hold and has been worked through. That's quite a long period of process, but that's been worked through between the planner and the applicant to ensure that our planners have the full suite of information that's required. So when we do receive the full information, that notification assessment will be the next step. at that. So as Wayne's mentioned previously, no decision has been made in that regard. I will just note that this application doesn't implicate the operations or the effects that the waste and demolition recycling activity will have once the site has been filled. So that's not part of what the team are looking at. So that's to obviously the fill application will be filling the site and therefore raising the level. There's no that doesn't mean that the waste and recycling plant can suddenly operate at that new higher level. That it's not part of what the team are assessing at this point. So that infers that the waste and demolition recycling activity will either need to come back and get a new consent or will stop operating. So it's not part of what they're considering. Thank you.
Yeah, kia ora koutou. I'm Carl Tully, Manager Compliance. So ultimately, the enforcement and monitoring side sits with teams that I'm responsible for. As Wayne's outlined, we're already working through reviewing the conditions of consent. So when I say that, that's both in terms of are the existing conditions being monitored, but also are the existing conditions appropriate. So there's two different angles that we're looking at there. Like most consents, there's quite a number of conditions. I think it's 34, 36 or something on this particular consent. A number of those are what you might describe as administrative conditions, or there are things that need to be in place before the consent is active. So that's a whole range of plans that the applicant needs to, site management plans, dust management, noise management, stormwater management, etc. So they all form part of the consent, part of the application. So we've got to work through and make sure that those are being complied with, as well as the conditions of consent. I've made a number of notes of things that I've heard today. Obviously, transportation is one of the key aspects to that as well. Monitoring truck numbers is extremely challenging. So I've noted that for particular attention. The dust and noise are definitely active issues that the team have been looking into. As Wayne's mentioned, staff have been on site numerous times, essentially at least weekly, really, since late last year, looking at a range of issues there. Dust is a challenging one. The consent recognises that dust is to be expected from activities like this. We have to get past the threshold of it being of actually having effects beyond the site. So not just that there is dust, but joining those dots. Where is it coming from? What effects is it having, etc. In order to inform our decisions. So in many cases, staff need to sort of witness that themselves as well. So as you've touched on, complaints have been made. Staff have attended the site. The issue, as reported, may not have been present when the staff were on site. So we do get into that circle. So essentially, that's a process that I'm working through now, with particular emphasis on the plans that have been submitted. Are they being applied correctly? Are they still adequate for the activity that's happening?
When's the regional council staff? Do you want to hear from them now?
Maybe what we should do is have an opportunity to ask some questions, and then maybe the right person can help answer those. So Monty, you've been recording some. I just want to make sure that we are checking off some of the points and questions that have been raised.
Yeah, look, I have. I mean, I've got a whole page here of the questions you've raised, okay? They've been answered in sort of a general sense. I was just sitting here thinking it's possibly best that this goes to Wayne to be answered in a more fulsome way in the report that you're bringing to the next meeting, rather than, I think you're going to get better answers, right? And then trying to do them now, because I suspect you won't go past the sort of general answers that we've received so far. So that's just my suggestion.
Yeah. I think there's probably a couple though that we would like to ask while you're here. I think the key thing that has sort of stood out is that members of the community have been monitoring and doing their own monitoring. Are these site visits planned for monitoring and compliance, or does the owner of the site operating the site know that council is monitoring?
Through the chair, no, generally speaking, monitoring visits will be unannounced. It'll depend on what we're looking at and what the conditions of consent are. I mean, obviously there are sometimes health and safety considerations and other things we may need to work with an operator if we're looking at a particular issue, but generally speaking, they're unannounced. The concern is probably more about we need to prioritise where those monitoring and enforcement activities are undertaking. So we can't be everywhere all of the time. So we will prioritise, the consents that are in front of us. Unfortunately, it does take complaints and sometimes, unfortunately, repeated complaints in order for monitoring of that particular consent to, become more of a priority than some other activities there. That's a busy team, and that's where we get to. So generally speaking, if concerns are raised, our objective is not to necessarily catch an operator not complying. Our ultimate position is to get to a point where they're complying. If we can do that without taking enforcement action, then fantastic. But we don't. We will work with them if we have to, but no, we don't generally announce if we're doing site visits.
Thanks.
Can I just, make one more response to Marie for her presentation in relation to Aspen Quarry. So I just wanted to be really clear. Firstly, thanking Marie for communicating us, being in consultation with us, because information that you have supplied, we have done quite a bit of monitoring out there in the Aspen Road Quarry. We've done enforcement. We've issued abatement notices. We've issued infringement notices on truck movements. We've had enforcement staff sitting in cars counting trucks all day, which is not a really good use of time. So we have been doing monitoring and enforcing. I just want to make that point, but also thank you for your presentation as well and the information that you've provided. In terms of quarry enforcement.
Okay, Pip and then Chris. Thank you.
It appears from me, sort of talking to the people who've commented and what you're doing from an enforcement perspective, bit of a cat and mouse game that's happening here. And what tools are available to make sure that it is not cat and mouse, that there is almost sort of like ongoing monitoring, be it video cameras, sort of technology, etc. Because we've got yin and yang here. We've got sort of these people are sort of saying, look at my homes, and I'm coughing and spluttering, and I'm sort of clean the deck, and it's sort of it's sandy, it's dust ridden the next day, and you guys are coming along and so saying, oh well, yeah, it's sort of operating within the consent. I mean, we've got a real issue here that it's not that the activity that the council is doing relative to what the people are saying is chalk and cheese. And how do we actually get reality of what the council does relative to what the community is saying and experiencing on a day-to-day basis?
Thanks for the question. Look, we're a council, we're a consent holder, we're the consent authority. We're responsible for issuing consents. We are responsible for monitoring those conditions of consents. We put obligations on consent holders to do certain things in terms of monitoring their own consents and providing us information to ensure compliance. We would love to use more digital technology, and Carl perhaps can comment a little bit about that, to having video surveillance of particular activities, because it is resource intensive, having staff monitor some of these conditions of
Does
consent.
self-regulation actually work? Because it would appear that we're requesting the holders of the consent to self-regulate, and it would appear that they don't want to self-regulate.
Yeah. So that might be in terms of providing a register of the amount of truck movements in relation to an quarry operation. Now, if it's found that truck movements are exceeding that register, then they are subject to enforcement action as well. So it's not a case of here's the information and we blindly accept it. We are out there monitoring as well in terms of truck movements, and I've just outlined that in terms of Aspen Road. But you can't, in terms of digital technology, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I share the concerns, like certainly there is some apprehension relying on the applicant providing information, and we certainly have had suggestions that there are issues and anomalies and things, and it's hard sometimes for us to prove otherwise. There are some consent conditions that are relatively straightforward where technology might be able to assist, but there are also quite a number of consent conditions that are subjective, for want of a better word, where you have to make an assessment as to what the actual effect is. So there might be some things where you can count something, or where something is not allowed to be present or must be present, and those sort of things where technology might be able to help. But there is still that element of sometimes having to make a subjective decision on what is the actual effect of the issue that we're looking at.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, and the extent of dust, for example, collecting on decks, etc. Is that not some indication that there's a real issue?
It's certainly an indication, but again, we have to make that link between where the dust is definitely coming from and whether it is objectionable, so there's a photograph of dust on a deck doesn't in itself prove where that dust is coming from. We need to make the connection.
Okay. All right, Chris, do you want to ask your question? Then we'll go Gerda and Stuart. Did you want to ask a question? So Chris, you're far away.
It's obvious to what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, is that the resource consent is issued with conditions. Those are not being complied with. The question I ask is, at what point does the consent get nullified and it gets shut down?
Yes.
I think let's wait for the report to come through. We haven't even produced a report. So there's a report to come through to the board at the next meeting, and we'll go through the conditions of consent in relation to compliance or otherwise. At this juncture, there isn't been any proof to escalate enforcement action against the consent holder, but but you need a report to be able to comment. We'll be able to comment further on that. Yeah, that's probably what I'd say. But I know I'm hearing what the residents are saying, and it's really important that you shouldn't experience any adverse effects. I'm hearing you're talking about the dust and the noise and so forth, but there shouldn't be any adverse effects from the operation on your properties. All right. So,
But there is.
but I'm just, as a principle, there shouldn't be, and if there is, we want to know why and which conditions are not being complied with to achieve that.
Okay. Gerda, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, please. If I just can say, do you agree with what these guys have presented, that we do sit with a problem?
Well, I've been listening really closely to the concerns that have been raised, but you've got to give the council staff time to produce a report in respect to all the conditions of consent. We haven't yet gone through and provided that report to you. And then that report will demonstrate whether the conditions are being complied with or not in regards to that. So yeah, that's probably my response to that point.
So this has been ongoing for how long, Andy? 18 months, where problem after problem after problem has been given to you and reported to you in the right format, with videos, with footage, with complaints. And all I'm hearing, and I'm talking from the residents' perspective, is we look at issues. What are you going to do about it? So you're looking at issues. What do we tell these guys? How is this situation going to be issued? Because when I spoke to people at council, and I talked about the dust for one with photographic evidence, and it was said, oh no, but that's from a quarry. Now it was clear here from everyone here that this problem didn't exist until the demo work site started. So my question is,
Yep.
You're looking at issues and looking at issues and looking at issues. When will things start happening? Because I don't want to look at a report after report after report and these guys' houses go down the drain.
So you raised concerns about the dust. I've indicated, and Carl's indicated, that there's been quite a number of site visits undertaken, and there's been communications that have occurred between our enforcement team and a number of the residents in regard to their concerns. So issues have been followed up. What I've been concerned to hear about is if there's still ongoing issues in relation to dust and noise in relation to the existing operations, because as I said, they shouldn't be experiencing any adverse effects beyond the boundary of the subject site.
Okay, Stuart, do you want to ask any questions? Just one more question, okay? And then and then Monty.
Yeah, so when I sent a photo, that's just before the fire started, also to a certain person in council, and said, I'll eat my hat if this is compliant. And he said, prove it's not compliant. That is not the answer I want to hear. The answer is, let's look at it, or we take your concerns at heart.
Okay. Noted? Yeah. Monty?
Yeah, I was just trying to look through for questions, and just while we had Wendy here, I thought this one was worth asking, and it's this question of incremental consents, which has been raised a couple of times, and I think it's a really good question for you to give your perspective on. And this is the point that, it was a sand quarry, so it's easy to be this, and then it's this, so it's easy to be that. Do you have any sort of general comment on that from your perspective as a planner?
So the applicants obviously put forward what they're proposing and how it interrelates as they see it to other activities on the site. So obviously the site has the quarry, the vermiculture, the sand filling, the waste, and all the activities. There's a large number, right? So the planner has to look at the effects that has been put forward by what their application that they're assessing in front of them, and then understand how it fits in across the others. So in terms of traffic effects, they're looking at how many traffic effects, how many truck movements come from all of the activities, and understand what their application in front of them compounds, so what the cumulative effects are from that. So they are looking at what their associated proposal is and the management of those activities to the extent that it affects their part of that site. But there are obviously going to be some cumulative proposals that kind of that add up in terms of like the trucks leaving the site. So that's not looked at in isolation. Does that make sense? Sorry, it's the end of the day. It's been a big one.
Yeah, it does kind of, but it also almost confirms that incremental consenting is a bit of a pathway.
But obviously yes, but then at the same time, at some point there comes a line. And so the assessment both is of, yes, that the activities on site have changed what's there and changed that environment, but that doesn't mean that, for example, the access way is forever going to be a state highway. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't allow it to just continue to compound what's there. So it is, yes, it changes the nature of that site. Obviously, it's no longer rural in activity as you would expect anywhere else, but that doesn't mean the build up can continue, and that's part of the planner's assessment.
Okay, we are going to need to move along. So is it an important question to ask, Chris?
With the incremental, you have say stage 1, which is working fine, and there's no exposure to dust or to other adverse effects. But if you do that next wee step, and you suddenly end up with a major problem, then that wee step was the wrong one, or it's not being complied with. In other words, the resource consent for that increment is being broken. Is that correct or not?
So obviously I'm from a consenting background, not from the compliance background. So obviously we issue the consent conditions based on the information in front of us and the technical knowledge of the conditions being adhered to based on the plans that have been put forward. So that's probably the extent of what I can answer.
Okay. Right, so we've got, I think, a couple of actions out of this. So we've compiled a list of questions. I think we've all taken some notes here. And you said you'll come back to us at the next meeting with a report which summarises some of this. I don't expect an answer, but one other member of the community also asked me in relation to the fire, if contamination is going straight into virgin groundwater if the pile that was on fire was not on a consented pad. You know, there are other issues that the community is obviously asking about. So we'll capture some of those things, unless the regional council would like to respond to that now.
Regional council perspective would be really nice, given you've come to the meeting.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if you could just give us a bit of background too, that would be great.
Processes and the format. So just open forum, we can address things.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So Patrick Lynch is my name, from the Waikato Regional Council. The title there is Regional Compliance Manager. And so anything of a compliance nature for any of the regulations, environmental regulations that we're responsible for, I suppose the buck stops with me for that. And I'll let Jonathan introduce himself.
Good evening.
That's part of the, yep.
So, good evening, Jonathan Cordwell. I'm an environmental chemist in the science section at Regional Council. So part of my role is managing our air quality monitoring program and also assisting with advice in regards to discharges to land, water or air. So that's my role.
Yeah, so Jonathan will be invaluable. So if there's specific questions as it relates to contaminants and air quality and those sorts of things, that's you're not going to get a better source than Jonathan for that. So just as people were speaking, I was trying to scribble down a few notes of what might be helpful to sort of try and convey, because people might not have a feel for what the regional council is or what our responsibilities are. So just qualifying things a little bit is that you've got two experts here, but in two quite narrow areas. So you might have questions about regional council activities, which we can't actually speak to because they're sort of outside our remit. But so if it's compliance related, that's me. And so that science and particularly air quality is Jonathan. So by way of context, the region, you'll be aware of the Waipa boundaries. We have 11 territorial authorities, 11 district and city councils within the region. Our total area is Bombay's down to Ruapehu, Morco up the west coast to the port, all of Coromandel down the Kaimai. So it's a large area with pretty much 500,000 people now in that area. We've got about 11,000 active resource consents. So just to give you a feel for scale, 11,000 active resource consents in the region currently. We get about 2,000 notifications from members of the public that something's going on, including your own, about dust and odor and various things going into waterways. And then also at scale, we've got a large industry. There's a lot of activities and industries in this region. It's probably the most prominent example is we've got 3,600 separate dairy farms, with 1.5 million cows, so there's all of that scope for environmental, I suppose, if not managed properly, environmental harm, right? So the couple of things that we were made aware of this meeting and just whether we'd like to have a presence. So I thought it was an opportunity to come along. There was one thing that I did want to table, probably two things. The first thing was, so Jonathan and I went to the fire the other day. We responded with the regional council, and we actually requested the Waipawa District Council health officers attend for them to be looking at what it is that they might do with if there were any health concerns beyond the boundary. The reason that we took Jonathan and called on Jonathan and he was able to obtain some monitoring equipment was to give us some real data about what it was that were there so that we could pass that on to the health officers here at Waipawa District so that they could trigger their responses. I think we were very fortunate the other day in that the fire was based in what appeared to be principally timber, albeit I would say that there were almost certainly other contaminants rather than completely untreated timber in there. There almost certainly would have been some treated timbers and painted surfaces, those sorts of things. And also a little bit fortunate with the wind direction in that it was probably heading to a sort of lesser populated areas. And if that fire had been sort of 15 odd meters in another pile that was full of plastics and sort of various other materials, and the wind direction hadn't been in our favour, it would have been a very, very different scenario. So one of the things that we've undertaken to do is to gather the information that we have about the site, what we know of the site, what the materials are, and putting a little bundle of information together to put it with FENZ and to put it with the District Council so that they can develop their own response plans for in the case of a future fire. So the fire risk is real in my view, and the relevant agencies need to be prepared for that should it happen. So as to the compliance monitoring and enforcement side of things, as far as the regional council is concerned, despite all of those, so one thing that we have done in response to complaints that we've received is we issued an abatement notice against the company. So an abatement notice is a tool under the Resource Management Act. We might issue 120, 130 odd during the course of the year. I would say probably 90% plus of those are actually really effective in getting behaviour change, because you give a formal legal notice to a company or an entity to change their behaviour, and often you do get, and far more often than not, you do get that behaviour change that you're after. I can say that in this instance, that on the morning we issued the abatement notice, it was appealed to the Environment Court by that afternoon. So that takes us, so that takes me and my team down a legal path where we end up having to prepare to go to the Environment Court for the purposes of really just trying to confirm an abatement notice, which is actually a relatively low-level tool. It should be sort of readily available. So in my view, and this sits with me, my call, that was something that we tried to get the behaviour change and it failed. So we're going down a different path. And so now what that path's going to look like, is difficult. There's complexities about me speaking about that in a public forum, because and I must really reinforce the if we do end up in some kind of enforcement process down the line, I can't jeopardise that process by speaking in a public forum here in a particular way. So look, despite all of those activities, despite all of those notifications and everything that was talked about, I can tell you that we've dedicated resources to this site, to looking into the activities on the site and how just really our start point will be assessing compliance across all of those environmental regulations that govern their activities. We won't be looking, it's not our role to look at the district's responsibilities. That obviously sits with the district. However, we'll be sharing as much information as we're able to during the course of that. We'll gather the information. If there is an enforcement decision to make, and this is where I want to be, give some reality to the situation, these things take ages. You know, when we do take enforcement action, if something happens in 1 year and we get a result, that's incredibly quick. You know, we've had processes that have had their 4th and 5th birthday and still taking them through sort of court processes to get to the point that they are. But again, often we get there, we get the result that we're after, we get the behaviour change. But I'm just flagging to you that in some cases, realistic, just being realistic, that's the process, that's the law, that's what it takes. But I can, and hear it from me, it is on our radar. We are dedicating resources to getting to the bottom of what's going on that site, and we will follow through with whatever we're able to. So sorry, I'm addressing that mainly here, but and so that's, I think that's the guts.
No, sorry, we can't ask questions here.
The guts of that, but maybe if I can turn to Jonathan to lead the air quality.
Okay, so part of my role is managing our air quality monitoring program. We have a state of environment monitoring program where our focus is actually monitoring ambient air quality in air sheds. As part of my role last Friday was to provide some advice, especially for the environmental health officers, around what residents' exposure might be, and also what we were actually dealing with that pile waste there. So with regards to that, we set up an air quality monitor. First, initially, when we got to site, we decided we'd set it up on site so we could get a worst case scenario on site, what sort of levels of smoke we were dealing with. So this monitor, I'd just like to say, is not designed for monitoring dust particles. It's monitoring PM 2.5, so particles that are airborne that are 2.5 microns in size or small, so really usually associated with when you have a combustion source. And so the levels that we measured on site in plume of smoke on site was what we would call very poor health levels when we compare them to the Ministry of Health's wildfire guidelines. So these are guidelines that are designed to give advice to public health officers around, do we need to evacuate people with levels that are above a certain level? And certainly those levels on site were at a level where you'd have concern if it was exposure to residents. So then we moved our monitor off-site to Kaipeki Road, where we could set it up for the rest of that day and over the weekend, because looking at the wind direction conditions, it looked like we were going to have a bit of a change from westerly to northerly direction, and that did play out. So we had the monitor set up in Kaipeki Road, and levels were in what we'd refer to as a good level over that weekend. I would reiterate what Patrick said about the potential for it to have been a lot worse if that pile of wood that had caught fire had transferred over to some of those other piles where there was a lot more plastics. There would have been a lot more concern around the toxicity of that pollution, and the fact that the wind direction was playing with regards reducing that impact in to high density residential areas. Probably the other part of my role, and I know Lorraine, I've had communication with you. I haven't been involved with the consenting process with regards the managed fill application, but I am aware that they are being applied for Class 3 waste acceptance criteria, which Wasteman's guidelines, which has had some direction by MFE, Ministry for the Environment, around setting acceptable waste acceptance criteria for contaminants in soils for what we'd call a managed spill or class 3 fill site or landfill. That said, they are just guidelines, they're not standards. So there's always that potential to take a site-specific assessment to come up with acceptable contaminant levels for a specific location, based on sort of groundwater, proximity to a waterway, things like that. Also, those guidelines, those Wasteman's guidelines also anticipate and expect that there would be good management on site, good dust control, and that there will be a minimal amount of that exposed area, so that you haven't got as much of their contaminated soils exposed, so that windborne dust can be transmitted off site. So that's my involvement. I haven't fed into that consent process, but I'm aware of that, and I'm aware that you had some concern around potential for dioxin, soil contaminated with dioxins, and I agree that there's not a lot of soil sampling for dioxins undertaken in New Zealand simply because it's very expensive. You are looking at a few $1,000s a sample.
Okay. All right. I think that's been really helpful. So just to summarize where we got to, so we obviously have a report coming back. We have some questions that have been raised that we'll document and compare with our notes, and then I think circulate to get a response back. So I think we'll put this item to bed now. I do have a recommendation that the Cambridge Community Board receives a report of Charlotte Fitzpatrick, Chairperson, Cambridge Community Board, titled Chairperson's Report, April 2026. Could I have a mover? Yeah, and seconder. Great, thank you. All in favour say aye. Against? Carried. And I think with that, we'll just take a quick break and adjourn for 5 to 10 minutes. Public, you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, or you can also quietly leave if you want to as well. Either way, happy to have you here. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll get back into our meeting. Thanks for that little break. Our next agenda item was Deputation Māori Ward Councillor, but it's very unfortunate that Councillor Dale Marie Morgan has had to leave, and we haven't had the opportunity to hear her verbal report, which is a bit disappointing. Yeah, we'll make sure that that's prioritised on our next agenda. And yeah, unfortunately, we didn't expect our previous item to go quite so long. So yeah, we'll move on to item number 6, which is proposed private plan change 37 Ryder Park structure plan area. And we have Peter joining us to deliver this report. So yep, take the hot seat, Peter, and then when you're ready. Oh, and Joe Greed.
Good evening. So the purpose of this report is just to present private plan change 37 for you to consider whether you want to make a submission. There's 2 options there in terms of your recommendation, that you can either agree to not make a submission, or you can agree to make a submission and delegate authority to someone to prepare that and finalise that on your behalf. This report is in my name because it's going through a formal notification process, but Peter is here to answer any technical questions of a technical nature in terms of the plan change that you may have.
So it looks like a fairly straightforward item. We're looking, yeah, would anyone like to ask any questions before we move to recommendation? We've got A and B. Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
I hadn't read the recommendations, and given it is to or to not make a submission, I'm going to withdraw from this. You might want to as well.
Okay, yes, because
Yeah.
yeah,
okay. So I didn't think I was conflicted until I read the resolution. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, councillors. So we'll go with recommendation A first, receive the report of Joe Greed, Manager Governance, titled Proposed Private Plan Change 37 Ryder Park Structure Plan Submission. Could I have a mover and a seconder for recommendation A? Yep, Chris and Gerda, great, thank you. All in favour say aye. Against, carried. And then the next recommendation is to either agree to not make a submission to proposed private plan change 37 Ryder Park structure plan, or to agree to make a submission to propose private plan change 37. I would take it that we are going to do a submission. And I'm happy to be the person to prepare that final submission if you're happy with that. Okay, so we'll agree to make a submission to propose private plan change 37, Ryder Park structure plan, and delegate authority to Charlotte Fitzpatrick to prepare and finalise the community board submission to the proposed private plan change 37 in consultation with community board members. Could I have a mover? Yeah, so Chris and second by Stu. All in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. All right. So our next item on the agenda is raised safety platform review, which we are very keen to hear about. And okay, so Brian Hudson was going to come and see us, but Evelisa, I'm very happy to see you here. You're going to deliver this report to us in his absence.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Evelisa Wright, the Group Manager of Service Delivery at Waipawa District Council. So this report is following requests of councillors and community board members to review speed bumps, road safety platforms. And so this report is an update on the commencement of that, and just to advise that this is going to be a district-wide review, so it's going to be focusing in Te Awamuruki as well as Cambridge, so to allow for a principled approach in terms of a process to go through our councillors through the Service Delivery Committee, hoping to be in August. So I'm going to take the report as read, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And if I can't answer them, I will take them down and make sure that they are forwarded on to you. And so I note that Chris Menet came on the trip with on the road trip with us.
Great. I think we just had one question around the timing. Could you just sort of expand on why August? It seems like quite a long time out, and this issue was sort of raised through the community board, a good 6 months ago. So yeah, if you could just clarify that, that would be great.
I guess it seems like a real simplistic approach, request to do a review, but it actually takes up a lot of staff and our time to get to a point where we can do a district-wide review and come back through with the proposed locations and then present through to a council committee. And just like for us, it's about workload and putting it into the August committee. The June committee is already very full, and those reports are due very shortly for us. And so the next available time was August, sorry. Yeah. And that's solely because of that reason. In terms of the review does take time and to go through its process as to what we need to do.
Okay, that's for that. But did you have a question?
And I think the council doesn't meet in July, correct?
Correct.
So it would otherwise have probably gone to July briefing, but we don't have any council meetings in July.
Right, any other questions?
Henry did the run a few weeks ago, just identifying particularly Bry Street, which is affecting the emergency services.
Yes.
Is there any way that can be expedited just for that particular, for the emergency services? Can something be done earlier than?
So in terms of the sites and the next steps, engagement within emergency services can definitely occur sooner, but in terms of the something, that's probably not realistic to be done sooner, but the engagement definitely can be.
Yeah, I mean, what I think we need to do is we need to get the emergency services as much involved as we can. But this has been going on for quite a while, and I just see the date, going on, and I'm just wondering whether just Bry Street re-ramping so that the emergency services can use it. At the moment, they have to use Victoria, Street.
So if you note in the report, it is subject to funding, and so in terms of any works and some council approval, so that's part of the reasoning around getting the principled approach and the consistent approach for future, and then also while we're looking at what happens to the existing. So that's one of the reasonings behind the August date too.
Okay, any other questions?
Sorry, just for my information, so we raised this at our very first meeting we had. What was the process between then and 6 months later? What has happened in the meantime? I just want to understand that.
So the process that has occurred, it has 6 months. The process, and I'm going to be upfront and honest, it has been delayed. We had a storm event in February, which really took our transport team's focus on to managing a state of emergency event in that transport area. And so we are now basically catching up on the work that was put on hold from the February event. So it's a process that we've worked through and understood that it needed to come, and hence the drive over to identify the sites. So that's what we have done. We have reviewed those locations in terms of where customers have called in and said, hey, these are some areas that we would like to review. So we've looked at all of our requests that come council. We've done the drive over, and now we're moving through the process of assessing what that looks like and the funding required. And then actually elected members have also asked us through council to look at what is a consistent approach of actually delivering race safety platforms into the future for all, so that it's a consistent and understood way and clear way, rather than feeling that it's very ad hoc for different locations.
So you're saying it's going to be in August. After August, when is it physically going to be something done about it?
That would be a decision of council.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so we have a recommendation that the Cambridge Community Board receives the report of Brian Hudson, Manager Transportation, titled Briefing on Race Safety Platforms Review. I'm happy to move. Could I have a seconder? Great, Monty, thank you. All in favour say aye. Against carried. As you can see, we're very happy to see this progress. So yeah, any further updates that you can continue giving us would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I'll give Katie her phone back that I stole.
Okay, and now we have our long-term plan 2027-2037 update, and have Melissa Russo joining us online. So when you're ready, Melissa, I'd love to hear your summary of your report.
Thank you. I will keep it short because I appreciate it. It's been quite a long meeting for you so far. So the purpose of this report is just to provide an update on where things are at with the long-term plan. So in terms of kind of key things that have been going on with the project of late, the report talks about elected members having a workshop on the strategic direction and priorities. So this is a key foundational workshop that really sets the scene for the whole long-term plan. So it is really important. So you'll see in the report, there's kind of starting to touch on some of the themes that have come through the first workshop that was held on the strategic priorities and goals. That workshop was held on the 26th of March, and we will be presenting the goals and priorities to council for formal adoption on the 29th of April. You'll also see in the report there is a table detailing all of the workshop items coming up for the remainder of the year. This is subject to change, but we'll just keep reporting these to you so you can keep an eye on items of interest. And that's all from me.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Do we have any questions from board members? Okay, that's easy. We have recommendation A, that the Cambridge Community Board receives the report of Daisy Wills, Strategic Policy Advisor, titled 2027-37 Long-Term Plan Project Update. Could I have a mover, please? Gerda, and seconder, Pip. Thank you. All in favour say aye. Against carried. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. And now we move on to the 6-month report, the group report. Wendy Robinson, Brian Hudson, Angela Matheson, Katie Mays. Oh, no, not Katie. Sorry, Katie. You're up next. Yeah, so Wendy, Brian, Angela. So we've got Wendy. Oh, we've got you online. Hello. Okay, that's great. Yeah, just take it away when you're ready.
Let me have a look at the rest of the report. I thought I was just talking to my one component of it. So obviously it's a 6-monthly report from community services, service delivery and regulatory groups on key projects and activities. So the recommendation is that you receive the report and as titled, and we can talk to each point as you wish, or if you have any questions.
Yeah, I think we've read the report. Okay, so we're happy. Thank you for reading the recommendation. Yeah, so we've just got one there. We'll receive the report. Cambridge Community Board receives the report. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Yeah, Chris and Pip. Thank you. All in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Just racing. We're racing through this now. Right, but yeah, Katie, you're up next, and we might have a few questions. So Katie Mays is going to join us for a Cambridge Connections update, and yeah, very lovely to have you. And sorry, it's taken a little while to get to you, Katie.
That's all good. Paul Marie, it's lovely to see you all again. I've put a report in the papers, which is really for information, but I thought this is a good opportunity to be able to just give a bit of an overview of where are we up to and what's coming next, and particularly because one of the things that I've asked for is that as part of the current stage of work that we're just starting, that we run a workshop with you at your next meeting, so that would be at the end of your next meeting, so that we can have the input of the community board, the ideas. So perhaps just to recap about where we're at with Cambridge Connections. So we ran the community engagement process for 6 weeks, which finished in early March, and sought feedback around ideas that people had about potential solutions. We ended up with over 1,500 ideas from the community, which was fantastic. And so we then supplemented that with technical ideas, and over 500 ideas that we'd received in the previous round of Cambridge Connections. And that work was synthesised and endorsed as a long list of transport ideas, which you see as an appendix in the paper by the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee last month. So what we're doing now is in this next phase of work, and I think in the paper that you've got is this is a funnel to sort of try and just have an idea of kind of how do we move from these over 1,500 ideas to a transport plan at the end of the year. So the phase of work now is to start looking at broad options of work, and that will be work that we do between now and the beginning of June. And those broad options are then looking, as it says in the paper, across network options, parking, public transport, and walking and cycling. And woven into that, we'll be thinking about how is transport used as a placemaking function, which is part of what we've been hearing about tonight, about that interplay. So some of those system effects, what are activities that others beyond Waipaha District Council have responsibility for that we would want to engage with? And how do we make sure that we are really cognizant of future technology and future changes that will be coming as well? So the broad options that we'll be developing across each of those will really be in a series of sort of spatial maps and general ideas. So they will not be presented as one coherent sort of set of options across the whole lot. And that's because what we will then be doing is seeking council direction about which of those options we then make sure that we do further investigation into, so that we can work from June through to the beginning of October to come up with a draft transport plan. And so obviously that's when a lot of the funneling happens. We'll be checking in with the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee at their August meeting, because we will start to be getting to that narrowing. And by the beginning of October, we will have put a draft transport plan to the committee for them to endorse, for them to go out for formal public consultation in those last couple of months of the year to get to the end of the year. So this phase is where we start, like I say, to start this funneling of ideas. So we will be working with our community reference group to do this work. We'll be working with you to do this work and starting to bring in some of the technical expertise and the evidence that we have that really supports these sorts of options. So for example, Waikato Regional Council, as I think I've mentioned to you before, has been doing work on potential public transport options for around Cambridge, which was one of the themes that came through in the public feedback. And so they will be working with us on those sorts of options as well, so we can develop them up. So that's the phase of work that we're in. And like I say, the workshop next time with you, we'll try and look across all of those. We'll bring you the evidence that we have to date and what some of those options might look like for you to be able to workshop those and make sure that we've got your perspective being really woven into the work we're doing. But perhaps just pause here and really happy to take any questions that you've got.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Katie. Pip?
I'm just sort of very conscious of sort of linking in Cambridge Connections and some of the stuff that we heard tonight in terms of to what extent can you weave in, for example, they were talking about, traffic movement from, let's say New Plymouth through to, I don't know, sort of somewhere down the sort of the line, which won't necessarily fit in with the sort of the traditional Cambridge Connections, but it's obviously a sort of major issue. Just be interested to see how we can weave in what we heard tonight into the broader Cambridge Connections project.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think this is a real mix and making sure that Cambridge Connections keeps working, in this case, with Eva-Lisa and her team around some of the current transport issues and what can be done, or with Wayne's team around current growth issues and what can be done. And then where do we need to look longer term? And so we've already, for example, around the freight issues, identified freight as as a big part of one of the problem statements that we need to address. So when we look at the options, we will need to look at, well, what is the impact from a freight perspective, including freight that's moving within, generated and moving within Cambridge, and understanding what's passing through our district. And we are keen to make sure that that the data that we've got, we're really trying to interrogate it to understand this, like your question before around the origin and destination, and so what is coming from further afield and what sort of proportion is being generated within Cambridge. So we've really got a good evidential base to be able to then think about, so what might the potential solutions be about that. So certainly we'll be modelling a lot of these issues will come up in the modelling that we do over the next few months. And similarly, some of the ideas and the concerns that the community's raised, many of them have already provided feedback into Cambridge Connections, which is fabulous. And so we will be thinking about that, particularly then when it comes to being able to prioritise what are some of the shorter term initiatives that we might be able to do to address any of the concerns that have been raised that would need to go forward for prioritisation in the 27-37 long-term plan to be able to actually provide funding for those things. So that's the way that we're trying to approach it, both within, so that we've got an organisation sort of approach to address the short-term and the long-term issues.
Any other questions? All right, just looking forward to the workshop. It'll be great. Okay, so we have a recommendation that the Cambridge Community Board receives the report of Katie Mays, Executive Director, titled Cambridge Connections Update. Happy to move. Chris second. All in favour say aye. Against carried. Thank you. And now we've got Joe with Assist the Cities Rocket Spark invoice update. Yeah, well, I think we've all read this report. Unless you'd like to provide any updates since you did your report. Okay. So we've got a recommendation that recommendation A and B, moved by Monty, second by Pitt. All in favour say aye. Against carried. Thank you, Joe, for your report. And then we have the Treasury report.
And I'll also take this Treasury report for the period ended 31st of March 2026 as read. Any questions?
No questions. Okay, so we've got a recommendation that the Cambridge Community Board receive the report of Nada Milne, Financial Accountant, titled Treasury Report for the period ended 31 March 2026. Moved by Gerda, second Stu. Thank you. All in favour say aye. Against carried. And now we'll do our board members' reports. So I think we'll start with this way this time. Monty.
Almost nothing, okay. You guys are very well informed, I believe. There's been a lot in this agenda. I know we rushed through it, but you're pretty much up to date. Probably the only meeting I wanted to tell you about was Financing Corporate. It happened on 25th of March. That is where our 8-month financial report came through. We have 3 big ones a year: the 4-month report, the 8-month report, and then the annual report. This was the 8-month report, so 2/3 of the way through the financial year. The basic take-home message is that the finances are stable, more or less on expectation. The big change in there the big variance is quite a substantial deferral in the capital expenditure program, mostly in response to slowing growth. So the team are doing what we're asking of them, phasing their catering for growth appropriately. Okay, so we're not getting too far ahead of growth. So that was very substantial slowdown. It's stuff that's just getting pushed forward into future years. That's pretty much all I wanted to say to you.
Great, thanks for that. Pip, any meetings that you've attended that you'd like to?
No, but I'd just like to sort of reinforce, Monty's comments. I mean, I think when I was about to receive that 8-monthly report, I'm thinking we're spending too much money again. But it was great to see that the council's capital expenditure program has really slowed down, and we were like $30 or $40 million below capital expenditure budget, and that's really a direct response to, as Monty called it, just-in-time infrastructure, and I think that's a really great thing. Chris and I have been working on sort of how we can sort of set up something in the park to sort of regularly meet with our residents. Unfortunately, the day that we selected, which was the end of April, turns out to be Anzac Day, which we can't have it. So I think Chris and I generally agreed that we will sort of do the last Saturday of every month, and that will be in the park with a Waipa sort of signage, and know that we are truly there just to listen, to understand what the residents' concerns are.
That's excellent. Thanks, Chris.
On the 26th, we had the Anzac Committee meet, and the organisation for this Anzac Day has been going very well. We've got a team that have got their heads together and everybody knows what they're on about, and it's working really well. The 2nd of April, I had the opportunity to go with me and Mike, Brian Hudson and Eva Lisa Wright for a drive around some of the speed bumps in Bryce Street and Alpha, Cambridge Road, and we got to see what we're actually looking at as far as the speed bumps are concerned. And as a result of that, it's been agreed to look at it more closely and come up with a game plan to either mitigate or remove. And then on the 16th of April, we had our last Anzac Committee, and the final details were kind of put to bed. And, I've got to say, I went into that not really knowing anything, and I've learned an awful lot. So hopefully on Saturday, it's going to go without a single hitch.
Yeah, well, thanks, Chris. Stuart?
I'm also on the Anzac thing, so anything about Anzac Day is what Chris has already said. I haven't got a lot to add other than most of it was covered tonight and all the things that have been troubling me and our community board. And hopefully we start getting some action about that. But yeah, so that's about it.
I've had a few meetings with Lakenwa, the group, to get the people over here. There was also, so that's on par. We nearly there with the final agenda. We need to get the finances sorted and the budget. Deb's been very helpful with that. Thank you, Deb. And we have they had a stall at the market, so they do that regularly. Just we very on the awareness thing, so we're building that. Heather Wellington did a radio interview. She was asked for that. She came to me on Sunday jittery, so I had to calm her down, but it went really well. And I think there's an article going in the paper as well. So the awareness thing is very important because otherwise we won't get the support we want. One thing that we're also doing is with the delegation that's coming over is to be part of the Christmas parade. So that's been agreed to. Cambridge Safer Communities, very involved in that. This was just we had a meeting just before, when we were waiting for the cyclone to come through. And Dave Symes talked to us because we weren't sure where they are involved and where the Cambridge Safer Communities Board get involved. And so we talked about that. So there's a clearer plan there. It was very interesting to talk to him about how they approach things and what can and can't be done and that kind of thing. What also came up is, so with Neighbourhood Watch, there's our new privacy rules coming in. So I did a training module for them and a write-up on the new privacy principles that coming in May. And that will be done so they're up to speed and they'll all try to change all their privacy statements. So I've done that for them. And then I was very involved with the DemoWorks thing. So I'm glad that I feel more accomplished tonight that we're making some headway there. Yeah, and then with the Cambridge Safer Communities, they're doing an absolutely amazing job. So very impressed with how professionally that trust is run. Yeah, really good people involved there. So that's me.
Thanks, Gerda. I summarised quite a few of my meetings and activities in the Chair's report, so probably won't go into those again. But just in addition to that, I have caught up with the CEO of the Cambridge Business Chamber, who I'm meeting with regularly, particularly just around upcoming consultations and our submission process, and just making sure that community and business members each have a voice in our engagement processes. And then I'm also trying to meet fortnightly with community advisors as well, just to share where we're at and see how we can work a little bit more collaboratively together to make sure that our community's needs and concerns and issues are heard and taken care of. But yeah, I just want to also just acknowledge and thank the board members for stepping in for a couple of meetings while I've been dealing with a personal issue. That's really appreciated, and I think we have a really, really cool team around this table, so thank you. And with that, I think we will do our last item, which is date of the next meeting, which is the 12th of May, and that is specifically to look at discretionary funding allocation. So with that, I think it's time to close the